Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm Ashley Abrams, Chair of the CAR Professional Development Committee, and I welcome you to the August Latte and Learn. This session is focused on buyer's representative update. Our guest speakers are Pat Whittam, Donna Patton, and Michael Guthrie. These speakers are pillars in our association and have taught for CAR for years, so I know that you will learn from them today. So speakers, I will now hand over the session to you.
Good morning, everybody. We appreciate your attendance, your welcome, and we will very much appreciate your participation. I'm going to begin this morning straight off the bat by asking Michael if he would give us a brief assessment of where he feels the CAR membership is in having adjusted to this new brokerage environment in which we find ourselves. Michael?
Yeah, thank you. And good to see everybody. Happy to be a part of this. And the reason Pat asked me to do this is because I shared a story with her yesterday where I had to laugh at myself because I was in a meeting that Pat and I think Donna was in it as well. And we were talking about these things, almost a year ago. And I said to Abby, couldn't you guys just please put a white paper together so that we'd all know kind of what the lay of the land is and what would be kind of the standard way of doing things. And Abby looked at me and said, what part of the agreement did you not understand? She didn't really say it that way, but the point being is that's exactly what the NAR settlement agreement was saying, is that we couldn't collaborate and do those kind of things. It needed to be something that was done within each office, with each company. And the other thing I said to Pat is the good news is when all this happened, this was a major problem as it related to the compensation and as related to buyer representation and making sure people had knew they were being represented or knew that they weren't being represented. And it was a major problem in 35 or so states because they did not have what we had. And just for a number of you that are on this call, this Zoom, you haven't been in the business long enough that we were doing buyer agency back in the early 90s. That's when the law of agency in the state of Virginia changed, and that line first substantive discussion came about. That at the first substantive discussion, we as realtors are supposed to just decide who our principal is, disclose it, and then act consistently in that or get it in writing, and then act consistently in that relationship. And so, in all honesty, simply put, and we can get into the nuances, and we will, for us, nothing should have changed. Um, it just spurred us on to hopefully be more professional in the way that we go about communicating with buyers and sellers, landlords and tenants, and we'll get into it, throughout the hour. But one of the simplest things I would tell you as we talk about the landscape, because it has changed, you've got to figure out, am I being compensated? If I'm not being compensated, who is going to pay me? How do I find out if I'm being compensated? What is one company doing versus another? All those things for sure are changes. But the thing that I'll end with is just if you think about the listing agreement, when somebody calls you up and says, "Hey, I'm interested in selling my house. Will you come over and talk to me?" We all know that we go there and we share who we are, we share our value, we share how we're going to market their house to get it sold, and then the ultimate goal is to get the listing agreement signed. And I think all of us would agree with that. What I want you to do as we talk throughout the hour and just as you talk with your managers and brokers in the future, think about the listing agreement the same as the exclusive right to represent agreement or vice versa. Think about the exclusive right to represent versus listing. The forms are the same. So one of the things I would say just starting out is if you really want to adhere to the changes and do the things that the NAR settlement says, well, go prepared to list that buyer. When you sit down and talk to somebody, that's what you should be. You don't have their house on the market before they sign a listing agreement. Well, same thing. You shouldn't be showing property to a buyer until you've listed them and gotten them agreeing that you're going to represent them. And if you put those two forms side by side, you'll see that the components are exactly the same. It's just one is pointed toward the seller, one is pointed toward the buyer. So that's, how I would start this out. And Pat, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you, Michael. Well said. Donna, other than wanting to add to anything that Michael has said, what are the primary challenges you're seeing currently or perhaps projecting into the future based upon your teaching at CAR and around the state?
So, good morning, everyone. I think that the challenges I'm seeing aren't from the newer agents. They don't know any different. I mean, they have learned this from day one because since 2012, we have had to have a buyer agency. Buyer agency was 95. 2012, it said you have to have it in writing and you have to talk about, what you're going to do. So I think sometimes it's and I won't say older, the more seasoned agents that, they kind of didn't really talk about this stuff. And I can remember, when they said we had to say we were getting paid, and that was big. People were like, oh my God, I've got to tell somebody I get paid. And so I think the getting paid part is the problem, whether you're a newer agent or have been in the business for a while. It's hard depending on how you were raised. A lot of us were raised not to talk about money. And so getting paid, I think it sometimes is a hard thing for people, but we have to understand these are our clients. These are our employers. And so we have to make sure they understand what happens, how much do we charge, and what happens in different situations. And we have to go over all of those situations.
Okay, thank you, Donna. Folks, we want you to be as participatory as you want to be. So at any point in time when you want to ask a question, please do so by, I guess, you raise your hand and Donna's going to help me monitor this. The next point I'd like to make is, and I'll throw it to either one of you, where do you see the concept of the expression of value figuring into how we build our business?
Well, let me just follow up on what Donna said to answer and then answer the question. When we talk about getting paid, we don't have any trouble talking about getting paid when we sign a listing agreement. The listing agreement says you're going to get paid X, and we don't have any trouble doing that, or maybe we have some trouble, but it's the way we've always done it. What I would say is the exclusive right to represent, you should look at it exactly the same way. That you're providing a service, and this is where I'm going to go to the question, Pat, that you're providing a value that's going to help that buyer find a house, negotiate mortgage, blah, 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 blah. And for that, the buyer is going to compensate you. Maybe the seller is going to be involved, maybe not. But the point being is, I go back again to this understanding and thinking about listing buyers like you list a seller. When you go to a listing presentation, you are prepared to sit down and talk about all the things that your company is going to do and that you're going to do to market their house to get it sold. Donna talked about it's almost like going to a job interview. They're our employer. They're hiring us to market their house to get it sold. Well, again, the same thing with the buyer. I should be prepared. I should have a presentation, a buyer presentation, similar to the fact that I have a listing presentation. And in that buyer presentation, I should be prepared to talk about all the things my company is going to do to help find the right house, what I'm going to do, where I have a sphere of influence of realtors in this particular neighborhood, and I'm going to reach out to them and see if they know anything that's coming on the market in the neighborhood that you want to buy in. I have this list of, you get my point. I think if we get to that place of thinking about it in that way, it becomes much more clear that we're communicating value and giving people that information so that they'll choose us. And I guess the word I would use is differentiator, right? What differentiates me from another realtor? And that's our job. And it's the same with the listing a house, but it's also the same as listing a buyer.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Donna, I think at this point we might start chatting about ways in which we can ask for compensation. And I will tell you that I will be very closely listening because I'm conscious of our need to not get too close to the margins of antitrust. So, Donna, if you will, could you begin a discussion about ways in which we can ask for compensation legitimately and in as comfortable a fashion as possible?
So we have to start this conversation with, we remember our licenses are held by our brokers. Our brokers are the ones that dictate or tell us through a policy manual what we have to do when we work under their brokerage. So each broker may have different things, they tell you, and if there are questions as far as, how you do or what you get paid, go to your broker first. So I will put that as a caveat. There are several different ways, and you should have this conversation with your buyer up front and let them know, okay, here's my value statement, like Michael talked about. Here is what I am going to do. I am not just a key. I am not just somebody that's going to get you into a house. I'm going to do all of these things from the time you find the house that you like, or even before that, through closing. So for that, I am charging X. And there is a possibility that the seller will not, so let me back up. You can do this two different ways. You can pay me out of pocket, or when you write the offer, you can ask the seller to pay your buyer compensation. Now, you notice I did not say I'm asking the seller because I'm not party to that contract. The buyer is asking the seller to pay the buyer compensation. Then you have to have the other conversation. What if the buyer says no? The seller says no. What if the seller says, okay, I'll pay you Y, but I'm not paying you X? I'm not compensating. Where is the extra money coming from? You have to have these conversations with buyers so they know where they land when they go to closing. Are they going to have to pay extra money? Are they not? And it's not the practice for a lot of people. You can ask the listing agent how much the seller is willing to pay. Most people in our area anymore just put it into the offer because that's where the buyer is instructing the seller what to do. Did I answer your question, Pat?
I think that's fine to this point. A couple points I want to make. We all need to remember that the buyer's agent being paid is the company. It's not Donna, it's the firm to which she belongs. And the other point I want to make is I want to clarify that, and Donna alluded to it, it still is possible for a listing company to be responsible for the selling agent's compensation. It is not very common in our area, but it's not something that's not allowed. Probably even more so, it is possible to ask the listing agent what the seller is going to pay. So that's a very direct question that can be asked. And some listing companies will say, we don't do that up front. We wait till our seller makes the determination based upon the terms of the contract. Donna?
Yes. And one thing I do want to make very clear, because I've heard it from several settlement people, we have to make sure as realtors on both sides that we are letting the settlement agents know how much the compensation is and who is paying what. And when they send you the documentation, look to make sure they have it correct. Because the fact is, if they have 0 there and you go, yep, looks good, guess what? You just worked for free. And I have had several settlement agents say that people are not sending information through the company. Your company needs to have something that you fill out and send through saying who is paying what.
You're absolutely correct. The idea of settlement agents paying brokers goes back a long way. In fact, we as an association struggled hard to get certain attorneys to be willing to be responsible for paying agencies. And now, of course, since the Board of Insurance has dictated, there's only one settlement agent, and we have to know who that settlement agent is and make sure that settlement agent gets the right information, because they cannot pay without instruction. There's no intuiting or assuming. I'd like at this point to ask either.
Let me add one quick thing to this conversation, because I think it's important. When we're talking about the compensation and how we're going to get paid and how we find out about it, obviously every company is different, and so reaching out to the company and asking, is the seller compensating? Is not? Do you have any idea what the seller might be willing to pay? You can do that for sure, but like Pat said, in most situations, the folks are going to say, my seller's willing to consider it, put it in a contract, we'll see what happens. But the thing that I wanted to share at this particular point is, when you're doing the exclusive right to represent with your buyer, at that time, you're telling them what you feel like you are worth, what your company has agreed and or charges for the services that you're going to provide to that buyer. And then from there, you work from there. That, okay, this is what we charge, and I'm going to do everything I can to get that money from other places. I'm going to get it from the seller. I'm going to get it from the other real estate company, whatever the case may be. But whatever that portion that I can't get, please understand that that will be your responsibility to pay. And so I think it's really important to start at the beginning of, what is it that you're worth? How are you, how much do you want to be paid? And then explain to them that there are other places that we can hopefully get that paid by other people, but whatever's left will be your responsibility.
Well, thank you both. At this point, I'd like to ask if either of you, based upon your instructing around the state, can offer any insight into issues we're having with having how forms are filled out, without again encroaching unfairly on anybody's company policy. Don, I'll ask you first.
Yeah, so we know the market right now. Okay. You may or may not have had a transaction since the forms changed. Hopefully you have. You need to know the forms. When they change on July 1, you need to know the forms. And they did change. A lot of the forms changed. And so you need to understand what the form says so you can tell the person what it says. And with filling it out, as far as compensation goes, there are a couple places. One says a percentage, the other says a flat fee. Do you know the difference? What is going on? What is your company's policy on that? And you need to make sure you know those forms backward and front so you can explain it to the consumer, even if they say, yes, I understand it. And we all use e-sign. Do not send the form and just have somebody fill it out. You can customize the form where it has the title. It should say, give me a call when you get this. So you can walk them through it. I know it says consult an attorney if you don't understand it. How many of you know that is actually on the form? We have to read the forms to them. We have to make sure they understand what they're signing. That's our fiduciary to our clients.
Okay, at this point, I'd like to know, do you see any questions from anybody regarding difficulties with the forms?
No, I am not
Any,
seeing
any
anything. I
particular?
have the chat up, guys, if you have questions.
Okay,
I have a
then
question.
good.
Hey,
Oh,
so my question was, does the settlement company, who is sending, I'm a new agent in the area, and who sends the documents to the settlement company exactly? Is it the lender? Is it both parties with
it's both parties.
both
Yeah,
parties?
you would
Okay.
send your clients, all of your clients' documents
Hmm.
to the settlement for agent for your client, whether it be an attorney or a closing company.
Okay, and that the buyer is not sending that, the agent.
Well,
Correct? Sorry.
you
Correct.
really,
The agent sends it. The buyer sometimes could, but
Okay.
so as a buyer's agent, and I don't want to take it over, but as a buyer's agent, you have to remember there is an earnest money deposit in most cases with the offer. And it says how quickly that has to get in. So depending on who you work for, some people, companies hold escrow, some do not. You need to get that paperwork to whoever is going to hold escrow, if it's going to be the settlement person or if it's going to be your company, as
Hmm.
fast as possible because they need that paperwork to open up the account to put that money in.
Okay.
I'd also
Thank you.
like, excuse me, I'd also like to add that I think it's incumbent upon each firm to make sure that in addition to sending your paperwork in, check with the other firm to make sure they've sent their paperwork in. Because I've known of a couple instances where a settlement agent felt they couldn't act because they didn't have the equivalent paperwork from the other side. So it never hurts to check and simply say, I'm going to send my commission disbursement in and expect you to do the same, or something to that effect.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
And as we talk about this particular thing, something jumps out at me, and that and I think is happening more often now with the way that we're doing things, and that is last minute changes. And whether it be your pre-settlement walkthrough, something comes across, and all of a sudden, who's going to pay for that? And sometimes the seller does a credit, sometimes they meet in the middle, sometimes commission gets reduced, whatever the case may be, result. And we've been good about getting the paperwork to the settlement company and getting everything moving forward. But those last minute things oftentimes don't get communicated to the settlement company. And I've seen a number of times where the closure disclosure document was not right. And this is where I would encourage each of you, if you're not, I personally, and again, this is my own personal preference, other people have different preferences, but I really believe that if you're representing that buyer or that seller, you should be at closing. And you should be asking for that information on whatever side you represent to make sure all the numbers are right, their numbers and your numbers. And getting that ahead of time so that if there is a problem, you don't have to deal with it at closing. But I think it's so important for us as agents, if we're representing somebody to the fullest extent, I think that includes going to closing and making sure everything goes well until the time they sign that document.
Michael, if you don't mind, I think we're primarily concerned with the selling agent going to closing, correct? It's not very frequent that the seller's agent is welcomed at the settlement that the buyer is involved in. Am I not correct?
Oh no, I'm just saying whoever you're representing. Yeah, I'm not saying that if I'm not representing somebody, I'm showing up at closing. I'm just making sure that on my side of the ledger, whoever I'm representing, they've got my counsel and my representation until the very end.
Right. In fact, that's part of our duty to manage the contract and part of our expression of value. Yes.
Before you move on, Janice O'Hara has her hand up.
Let me say one other thing now before you speak. This goes back to what we're talking about again about differentiator and value. There are agents that don't go to closing. So when you're talking to a buyer in your buyer interview, to say, and I will go to closing with you, they may interview somebody else and somebody not say that. That could be the reason they choose you versus somebody else because that piece was important to them. So that's what I was kind of talking about as far as having things that you can put down as your value that differentiates you from others. Sorry, Janice.
Okay,
No,
Janet.
that's fine. I have a question. Have any of you seen an instance where the buyer is required to pay their agent? Um, is it, I haven't had a buyer since the forms have changed, but I'm just curious, um, if they have to pay, is it automatically part of their closing costs or are they paying the firm directly?
So I will speak to that because I have. Um, so that will be collected at closing from the settlement provider, whether it be an attorney or, and it will be part of the money they have to wire for closing. And it speaks to the importance of making sure the settlement provider has documentation on who's paying what.
I think that's well said. Any other comment?
I would
Anybody?
just answer it. I think that the simple answer, though, Janice, is the money goes to the brokerage first. It doesn't go to you. It's always goes to the broker, and then whatever agreement you and the broker have as far as how that gets split, that happens then.
No, I understood that. I was just wondering if they were if the client was having to write the check directly to the firm or if it was considered closing costs.
There's no requirement on that. I think what Donna's expressing is the norm. It's a good way for a buyer to handle all their expenses. There's nothing that would prevent a buyer from directly paying Michael's firm, since that's a client relationship. I want to, at the risk of treading on anybody's policy, answer two questions that I've been asked. The first one is, are we obligated to send our buyer representation agreement to the listing company if they request it? And the answer is no, we are not. Those are confidential agreements. The agreement, I'll pick on Donna first. Donna's buyer agreements are between her company and the buyer. Michael's listing agreements are between his company and the seller. And there is no obligation. If somebody wishes to do so, I would suggest your company policy better allow you to do that, because we shouldn't be doing that at all without the company saying it's okay to release our confidential documents. That's number one, and I'll wait to see if there is any comment before I introduce the other subject.
Yeah, so that goes back to your e-signature stuff. Remember, hopefully you've gotten that buyer agency form way, way before. But we do know people come in town and we're working fast and furious with them. And so make sure you know what you're sending. And don't reply all and don't forward emails out from your clients. Download those documents, send them on to the other side, make sure you know what you're sending. Thank you, Maisie. She says she never sends it with the offer.
I had a question. Am I coming through?
Yes.
Okay. It's Erin Garcia. We've had there's definitely a few attorneys in our area that it's standard that they're wanting all of the documentation. Obviously, I think everybody knows this, listing agreement, buyer broker, et cetera, in order to get closed. And I understand not sending it to the other firm, but I was wondering the legalities of that piece. Is that making it a requirement?
Well, I'll hazard a guess. One is, nothing that I've ever read regarding the settlement agent's duties suggests that the settlement agent has to have confidential documents. What it says is the settlement agent has to have all the necessary information to know that closing can take place, that the transaction can go to settlement. I think it's up to your firm, whichever firm we're talking about, to decide whether or not they're going to comply with that attorney's request. Because again, I will say, and I say it with confidence, I've seen nothing that suggests that all documents have to be supplied, whether they are documents pertinent to the transaction or not. and a buyer representation agreement is not pertinent to the transaction, and neither is a listing agreement. What's pertinent to the transaction is the contract and any attendant documents, such as addendums and amendments with all the changes that Michael correctly said should be managed and followed through.
Also, Francesca had a question.
Well,
Yes.
let me answer Aaron's question too. Aaron, I agree totally with what Pat just said. Now, am I gonna, not send it if the attorney's gonna make a big deal of it? I mean, that's you got to decide which battles you're gonna win and which ones you're gonna lose. But I would definitely have my agent, I mean my client, give me permission to send it. But the only thing I can think about as to why they want that is because your exclusive right to represent agreement and your listing agreement clearly state what the compensation is. And so it may be that they're using that to make sure that those things are matching up with what the exclusive right to represent says the buyer is supposed to be getting so that they can put it on their side and list it. That's the only reason I can think that they would want that. But certainly the
Yeah,
attorney is going to keep that information confidential.
I think that makes sense on the listing side because obviously the listing fee is not in the contract, whereas now that we
Right.
are putting it in the contract, it's very puzzling. I mean, I've had to do it 10 times probably. And like you said, Michael, is it worth fussing about? I've just sent it over, but I
Yeah.
think that it's there's Janice is saying, I think it's fascinating because it does feel like an overreach, but it also seems like they've just made that a standardized practice. Just rubs me the wrong way. So anyhow.
Yep. I agree. I
I
agree.
think it's their
And
survival.
As Pat said, there's nothing that says in the regulations that it needs to be done.
I think also Michael made a very good point about confidentiality. Whether you're sending over the buyer representation agreement or the seller's listing agreement, there are two people who have to agree to do that. One is the client, and the other one is your firm's policy. And on that subject, I want to dovetail a little bit on something Donna said.
Pat, I think there was another question.
Yes,
Oh.
Francesca.
Good morning, everyone. My question is I have not had this happen yet, but I know it's probably the future of the purchaser, your buyer, paying my compensation. However, let's say that I'm putting an offer and the buyer is asking the seller to pay my compensation and the seller says no. So we've already had this conversation with the buyer that if the seller does not pay my compensation that the buyer would I be writing an addendum for the attorney, or do I send in my buyer broker agreement plus an addendum? Um, can anyone tell me about that when it happens?
You want me to speak to it, or are you going to speak to it, Pat?
Go ahead, Donna.
So you would not have to do any type of addendum because of the fact that the compensation would be, if they had asked for it and the seller said no, it would be struck out in the offer. And then everyone would sign off. And you can send in your buyer agency if the buyer is pushing back, going, wait a minute, wait a minute. You can send it in. If not, just send in the form that states who's paying what. And, hopefully, and I don't know if I'm on a VAR contracts meeting after this. I'm not sure if we have a form that actually talks about compensation through VAR. If not,
510.
510. Okay. So fill out 510
Okay.
and make sure that, it's there. And, if you're iffy about it, have your buyer initial it or sign it.
And the
Okay.
other thing I think is important here, Francesca, with the forms is you got the 510, but you also in the rare occurrences now where the seller, I mean the listing company is actually offering the compensation. They've got a total amount of commission that the sellers agreed to, and they're going to pay X amount of it out, like the old days, like the way you used to do it. There's another form that you would fill out in that situation that clearly delineates that the listing company is going to be paying a portion of their listing agreement as buyer agency compensation.
I think
Okay.
Teal's going to tell us that currently it's Form 500,
500?
isn't it, Teal?
No, it's 510.
Okay.
A broker to
500
broker?
is 500 is saying how the broker and broker are going to do it.
Right.
510 is a compensation to the attorneys.
I know,
Okay.
but Michael was referring to the
Yeah,
broker.
500 is the one I was referring to.
Okay.
Okay. Now,
So 510 you would fill out and that way your compensation is on the HUD statement or the disclosure. So or you could just have your buyer pay your company directly. Either or, correct?
now, if it's a 510 or a 500, there's no problem. In fact, it would be a very good idea to send those to the settlement agent because
Okay.
those are transaction documents, meaning
Okay.
they're involved with the same transaction, whereas the listing and the buyer rep are not the same transaction.
Okay.
Is there another question? If
No.
not, I want to dovetail on something Donna said, and this is from the School of Hard Knocks. Be very careful not to answer somebody or attach something that is attached to a thread, because there are confidentiality issues when we send things through threads. There could be a confidential statement somewhere between a buyer and a buyer's agent, and if the buyer's agent forwards something to a seller, that confidentiality thread is encroached upon. And that
Yeah,
goes
just a fun little side note. Thankfully, I haven't had that happen professionally, but personally, when my daughter was getting married, the pastor was asking for the fiance's email address. And so I put it in, I was typing and I put it in the CC just to make sure I had it. And I was typing his email address down below, but I forgot to take him out of the CC. And I had written some things to the pastor about the fiance and
there.
my concerns or whatever. I mean, it's very positive and whatever, but it was just these are the things I'd love for you to be talking to him about in the premarital counseling, blah blah blah. So, needless to say, I got myself in a fair amount of hot water because it went to my daughter's fiance, and of course, immediately heard about it. And when I reached out and finally had a conversation with him, I said, Ben, I was going to wait till Easter to talk to you about this, but he said, hey, no problem. Everything in there was true. I had no problem with what you said. It should, your two daughters were the ones that got all out of whack on it. So anyway, just an example of how it can negatively impact you if you're not being careful.
And I will again dovetail just for a minute. I received a call asking if something was a violation of the Code of Ethics. And it was because there was a thread in which somebody said, the person that we are working with is very difficult, or the person that we are working with does not answer phone calls, or the person we are working with is uncooperative because there was no motivation to negotiate. Those things really don't help facilitate a transaction. So we need to be very careful of what appears in our thread. Is there any question at this point from anybody? Then I want to introduce one other subject that I have experienced, and that is based upon how we used to do things, there is memory, and sometimes that memory says, well, Michael and Donna have these obligations because that's what we were taught under the code. So I want to speak really quickly to cooperation under the code. We have had no changes regarding cooperation under the code. We are doing things the way we always did it. We have a duty to cooperate unless it is not in our client's best interest. The only changes we have made have really to do with our multiple listing system regarding expressions of compensation and how we can represent a seller's willingness to participate on behalf of the buyer. So I'd like to keep that distinction clear. I've had a couple questions. I'm going to use Donna as an example. She was not the party, of course, but the question is, if I call Donna and she won't tell me what her seller is going to offer, isn't that a violation under Article 3 under cooperation? And the answer is no, it is not. Donna has never had an obligation under Article 3 as such to say if the seller's offering a cooperation unless the seller tells her to do so. So we need to keep the distinction between what MLS allows and what our code requires us to do.
May I follow up on that, Pat?
Please.
Because I have heard one or two agents say this, and I was like, wow. Y'all know me. If it doesn't come out my mouth, it comes on my face. So they said, well, I am going to do this. I think it should be this way. I don't want it to be that way. Are you buying the house with them? Because that's the only time you have an opinion is if you're if you're one of the buyers, your client is the one that instructs you on what to do.
I think that's well said. And this might sound a little bit preachy, but I think I'm old enough to do it. We need to be careful of expressions such as, I'm not going to allow my buyer to do that, or I'm not going to allow my seller to do that, or I'm going to tell my buyer not to do it, or tell my seller not to do it. That's a risk position your broker would not like to have you be in, because the risk we represent almost automatically involves risk to the company, because we get looked at in terms of policy and training to see if that's how we taught our our agents to behave. Are there any other questions at this point about how we are cooperating regarding making offers that include requests for compensation?
I had a question. When you said that the buyer has to call the seller to get that percentage on what they're paying, that's not what you meant, right?
Not the buyer.
Not the buyer. Okay.
The buyer's agent should do that. And the buyer's
Okay.
agent should not call the seller. The buyer's agent, if he wants to make a call, should call the listing agent.
The list. Okay, yeah.
Would there be anything to prevent a buyer from calling a seller? By law, no. By practice, it is not recommended, because that's why we interpose ourselves as agents. We tell them to work through us, so it remains arm's length, right? So yeah, it should be the buyer's agent.
Perfect. That's what I thought. I was like, I think I misheard that, but I'm going to ask just in case.
Well, no, I appreciate you clarifying that. All right, folks, what else is of any concern, particularly regarding cooperation and sharing information without, again, getting too close to the margins of antitrust?
Yeah, let me say something, and then I'd love to hear from, we've got some wonderful people on this call that have a lot of experience. One of the places I think that is the most challenging, we can do everything right? We can do our exclusive right to represent. We can tell this is what I'm going to get paid, and I'm going to do everything I can, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, when you write that commission into the contract, and the contract's being negotiated back and forth, and all of a sudden, what you thought you were going to get paid by the seller gets reduced. To me, that's where the greatest tension is having going back to your buyer at that point and to say to them, look, the counter is this, the price is this, the terms are this, but they have reduced what I put in as it relates to my compensation. So that means that there's an additional whatever that is going to be owed. And I think, that I bring it up because I think you need to be prepared. Get with your broker, get with your manager, and be prepared with how you want to handle that objection. The objection is already handled because, as we said at the very beginning, we got that agreed to when they signed the exclusive right to represent. They agreed they're going to pay you X, or the company X. But when you have to go back in the midst of negotiation, it can, people can get sort of nudgy about that. And so I bring it up, one, to know that that's a place that you need to hone your skills. But two, I would love to hear from any of you that have experienced that, and how you go about handling that has worked for you.
May I jump in real quick? Michael, you know I don't pick on you. I'm semantics here. Please remember, it's what they had you put in the offer
Right.
for their buyer agency compensation, not what you put in the offer for your buyer agency commission or compensation. Make sure you're always referring to them as to anything that has to do with that offer. And I know, Michael, you meant that, but I just want to make sure people are really careful on their wording, because they're going to come, you never want a buyer to come back and say, well, you put it in there and you said that's what you get. So Teely has her hand up.
Is there anybody willing to, Tilly, good.
Okay. Michael, what we do in our help our agents with is that we say that in our buyer's agreement, this is our value, this is what we want. But then in other terms, we do have a clause for our agents that says, I will not work for less than this. So if that gets reduced in the contract and they put and then they say if the seller pays nothing, then they know that they're gonna, so that's all done in our buyer's agreement. So it's all done up front. There may be some reducing and going on because we have had that happen with our firm before the listing things changed. So my thing is, if you're a buyer's agent, beware of the contract and watch what is being put in there, and don't let your buyer initial it if you don't think it's right. Talk to your buyer about all that before some of the agents just evidently buyers initialed, that's okay, I want that, and that's not what the agent wanted. so those are the, but if you have those clauses and those talks up front, you're pretty well set.
Any other comments?
Kate Hayes has her hand raised.
Oh,
Hi, good morning.
Katie.
Quick question. I'm a new agent with Four Seasons Realty, and after hearing all of this, which by the way, this information is wonderful, thank you very much. How often would you say that these types of situations come up in the business? How often would you say that you have to go back to the buyer and say, okay, the seller has said that they are not going to pay, or they can only pay this much? I'm curious if this is something that happens frequently or if this is something that happens like every once in a while.
Well, I'll jump in. I'm sure Pat and Donna will jump in as well, but I would say that it's pretty regular. Frequent, maybe not frequent, but pretty regular. But I'll say one more thing, Kate, and that's a great question. I think it's going to become more prevalent. And the reason I think it's going to be more prevalent is that even though it's been a year, I think there's still people out there that don't understand what changed, and that they don't know that they can ask you to reduce. And so in some ways, it hasn't been as challenged as it might be. But I think as more and more this comes into play, and you do a transaction, so now you've done one and now you're about to do another one, I could see that it would become more frequent rather than regular.
Okay.
With practicing, Michael, I'm finding that people already know about it. They are very versed in it. When they come to the table to meet with you, they are very versed in what's, been out there. Now, do they have the correct information? Sometimes not. But they have heard things. And we have to remember, Kate, that all commissions and compensation are negotiable.
Mhm.
And so we have to remember that.
Donna, I think that is the one thing people know. I have to agree with Michael. I think there are a lot of people who don't understand the process, and that may not even think about it as a strategy, but I agree with you. They have understood that all compensations are negotiable, because that's what all the literature has told us the problems with NAR have been about. Non-negotiable commissions and no transparency, which we know was not the case.
Yeah, and Pat, I would add one other thing to that. I know Mazi, you raised your hand, so you
I'm trying to find
jump in.
the raising hand emoji, but I
That's
can't.
okay. We got you. You can talk right after I get done here. But what Pat just said is so important. You know, why the NAR settlement had to happen is because people were not trained properly in regards to making sure that what we decide who our principal is. We notify that folks, we get in writing, we act consistently in the relationship. There were so many people out there that were saying, "Oh, let me help you buy a house. It's free." It's never been free. You know, it was the offer of compensation was from the seller. There was that money was baked into the price or whatever the case may be. But that line right there was stuck in the court's craw. Was that time and time again they had references of people say not communicating what the compensation was really like. And so to me, this is a good thing. It was a good thing in the early 90s when we did it. You know, first substantive discussion, it makes you more professional. You have to meet with the people before you go out and show property versus just showing up. It's a safety thing. It gives you a reason. You can make this rule the reason that, hey, we've got to meet at Starbucks before we go to the house, or we need to meet in our office versus meeting somebody out in the middle of nowhere. So anyway, my point being is, this is a good thing. It makes us more professional. It makes us explain exactly who we are, and that you're walking into the process in a much better place than a lot of us were before.
Any other questions from anybody?
Mazi had something she wanted to share.
I don't know if it's maybe better for the new agents. I think the more clear and transparent you are with your clients, the more they will appreciate you more. Just be clear about your role and about how things are going to be paid, and then also let them know that it can be paid in closing, in settlement, right? So nobody think that they can come up with the money up front. Um, it is a new market, so we do need to adapt to the new rules and the new market, and we do have more time now to explain our clients everything and to negotiate with the other side. When you write an offer, just do the best you can and write whatever you think is best after you're consulting with your client. And I don't even call to the listing agent to ask if they compensate. I just put it in the offer if, after having a conversation with my client.
Also, there was one in the chat. Arlene answered, but if anybody else, has anyone had to have their buyer pay their complete buyer compensation?
Yeah, I had.
I believe we've had that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I have a question as well. Kind of an experience with the buyer's compensation. I had, I make viewing homes what they're paying their buyer's agent. Just right off the bat, I'm learning it's very helpful when just to have that knowledge. But I recently had to, not that I will always reduce my rate, but because I was representing a family member, and the seller's agent was not going to be paying that, they weren't.
Don't get into specifics, okay?
Oh, okay. Yeah. But I was just saying that I have had that happen and I have had to change that in a contract. My question was, the contract and the contract you do with your buyer has to reflect the same amount, correct? That's like if it
That's
does get reduced.
Melissa, that's a great question that we didn't touch on, but yeah, you want to put exactly what you're going to be compensated, and here's the thing. If the seller is willing or the other company is willing to do more than that, you can only get paid what you have in your exclusive right to represent agreement. That I really appreciate you bringing that up because that's a really good point. That whatever it is that you think you're valued at, that's what you put in there. And even if the market's changing a little bit, and you might see now, you know, we're going to pay this much for a contract, and we're going to send you on a cruise as a bonus, kind of thing. Well, if you didn't have that amount of money at a cruise and your exclusive right to represent, you ain't going on the cruise. Um, and so that's a significant change.
Or Michael, let me massage that a little bit and say you can go on the cruise as long as your buyer client agrees to it. It's just like a
Not,
bonus. It's just like a
I,
bonus.
I, I thought that would be above and beyond I thought you couldn't get compensated anything above and
You
beyond
can
what you have in
you
your
can get
agreement.
compensated. You can get compensated any amount relative to your buyer as long as if the buyer has financing or some other constraint, then it wouldn't happen anyway. But there's nothing wrong with a buyer ever paying a bonus to the buyer's client. It's the same way if we sell a new construction home that's got a bonus. As long as the buyer knows about the bonus, we're okay.
Wouldn't you, Michael, wouldn't you, and Pat, wouldn't you have to have an addendum or have something amended in your buyer's agreement to
Yes,
say,
I didn't get there. Yes,
okay,
absolutely. And we've got a few minutes left, but I want to make this clear. The NAR settlement did not discuss contracts. It primarily discussed brokerage practices relative to how we deal with buyers and how our listing relates to the MLS. So let's keep in mind, we will get paid what the contract that authorizes our payment says. In the listing, it's whatever the listing says. In the buyer representation, it's whatever that says. Whether it's facilitated by the contract is another matter. The settlement agent will look at the contract. That will govern what will happen at settlement. Are there
All
any?
right, so I need to. I know we're running out of time here, but any of you that know Greg Slater, um, Greg, you need to tell him that I did this during this class. I'm the chair of the Carr Foundation, and Greg is the past chair. And on September 4th, we're having a big benefit concert out at Pro Renata, a band called Gone Country. And it's going to be a fantastic event. We've already got lots of great sponsors. I think half the tickets are already sold. But we'd love for you guys to come. We'd love for you to buy tickets and give them to your clients. Simplest way, caarfoundation.org. Go on there and you can click on the link and get yourself registered. But the most important thing is that you let Greg Slater know that I promoted the Carr Foundation benefit concert during the Learn and Latte session today.
Okay, now I don't know whether that was a paid political announcement or not.
I
But
don't
let
think he's paying me, but at least I won't hear the wrath of him saying you
right.
didn't do it.
Madison Parks and Rec had Gone Country at Music in the Park a few weeks ago. It was a really good show if you like country.
There you go.
I hate to jump off, guys, but I have a VAR meeting.
Okay, let me make my closing statement, and I'll see if anybody else has one. Please do remember that your company policy has to govern all of these negotiations you do. And if you've got a company policy, and I say this particularly to the new agents, if you've got a company policy that says, I don't care what you charge, and I don't care how much you reduce it, you better know that that policy is there, because most companies do a budget based upon listings and closings. And that company policy really governs what any of us is allowed to be paid.
So you're telling me that if your company's policy is to pay a certain percentage, then if your buyer does not want to pay that, then you cannot take that, or how does
Oh,
that work?
you go and talk to your manager.
Okay,
Or you have a manager.
okay,
Right.
got you.
Just work it out.
Okay,
Work it out with your company policy and your manager.
okay, perfect. Thank you.
Anything else?
My closing statement is I want you to think of NAR settlement a year later as your friend. That this again gives you a reason to do your business the way that you should have been doing it already if you weren't. And you can let the NAR settlement be your bad guy. and say, well, why do I have to meet you before I go see a house? Well, first, the law in Virginia says that you have to, but secondly, National Association of Realtors, blah, blah, blah. So use it as a friend, and make yourself more professional by understanding the agreement and being able to explain it in a practical way that everybody can understand.
Anybody else wish to make a closing statement? If not, then thank you very much for your participation. We're always happy to offer whatever experience we have as car instructors. And thank you to, where is our Teresa? Thank you. And thank you to the program chair who allowed us to be on the panel.
Thank you. The panel did a great job. Thank you.
Yes, they did.
Thank you all for being here today.
September 4th, throw an auto.
There she is. Thank you, Ashley.
Yes. Oh. And Teresa is going to jump in here now and share what we have upcoming for car classes.
Yes. So very quickly, our next Latte and Learn is going to be on September 5th, and it's on appraisal updates with Woody Fincham. So if you haven't registered for that, go ahead and get registered. And then, of course, our annual Development and Economic Summit. I'm excited about this, guys, because we have Lawrence Young coming from the National Association of Realtors. We have Danushka coming back. She's always very informative. Love her to death. Ryan Price will be there. And then Emily Kilroy from Albemarle County is going to be there to give us our local update. And I will be in town, so I will be there. So I'm excited about that. And then next we have the GRI 506 risk management. If you're a new agent, I encourage you to take these classes. This is a great foundation for you. And we have excellent instructors. So Michael and Pat, Michael and Donna are our instructors for our GRI classes throughout. And these classes are really, really good. We also are going to offer the accredited buyer's representative. So guys, what we're talking about here today, the ABR class, excellent class, excellent instructor with Tara Houston. I've known Tara for probably almost 20 years. So she's great. If you didn't get a chance to take that ABR class this past year, because I know we had it last year, this is a great opportunity for you to do that and get registered. It's going to be on September 29th and September 30th.
Great for all new agents.
Yes, this is great. Latte and Learn October 3rd, short-term rentals is coming up. So I'm just going to dive a little bit further out. For those of you that need your 16 hours, or those of you that are a broker and you need the full 24 hours, we've got that coming up in October. So if you need the 16 hours, October 9th and October 16th, I've taken the hard work out for you. I put in on those 2 days exactly what you need to renew your license. So you don't have to guess about it. You just go ahead and register for both of those days. New member incentive classes. If you are a new member with CAR, we have these classes twice a year. Listing entry workshop and how to avoid being the agent no one wants to work with. And these will be taught by, I want to say Amanda's teaching this one. But I know Amanda being president next year, she won't be teaching, and Donna's going to teach it. And then Pat's going to be teaching this one for us. So excellent classes. Even if you're not a new member, you can still take these. They're free classes. Just register. Supervising broker and management of real estate brokerage firm. This is for those that have the broker's license. They need an additional 8 hours of CE. And these are the 2 classes that will give them those additional hours. So this is coming up on October 23rd, but that's a Thursday. So 3 Thursdays in a row for those that are brokers.
Excuse me.
Yes.
I had a quick question.
Yeah.
Those the Sweet 16, I think you talked about the class on the a couple of classes, I believe. Would those work For the 30 post-education hours as well, would some of those be applicable to that?
Some of those will, but when I said something about the GRI classes, that's the program that you want to get involved in as a new agent. There are 10
Okay.
total classes for that. And when did you get your license?
I got my license a few months ago.
Okay. So you could possibly get all of them done within that year if you started with the 506 that's coming up in September.
Okay.
507's coming up in October. We have three of them for the rest of this year that you could get involved in. And then if you reach out to me, Kate, then I can help you with some of the other classes, tell you when you can,
Fantastic.
okay?
Right. Thank you so much.
The November general membership meeting is coming up on November 6th. And then we have the 508 real estate law, which is the GRI class. These give you credit, CE credit as well for those of you that need it. And then, mark your calendars, guys, because December 4th is the general membership meeting. That's the installation of our 26 officers. And then please utilize our affiliate members. They're members with us. You don't have to go out and search, try to find people. We've got an affiliate directory here. If you scan the QR code, you can see that directory. It's on our website as well. And then the last thing that I wanted to remind you of is CAR has a diversity, equity, and inclusion library that is in the store. So you can definitely just go in, grab a book, just read it, then put it back. Somebody else gets an opportunity. Does anybody have any questions about any of the classes? I do want to say to you that I have opened all of the classes all the way through April of next year, and I will be finishing that out today. So all of my classes are in for 2026. You can go ahead and start making your plans for, okay, this is what I need to take for next year. We are,
Teresa,
yes, Pat.
I think Mazi Vogler was asking about any broker classes coming
Yeah.
up.
So we are not going to have the broker classes for next year.
Okay.
I know that Richmond is doing broker classes. You can also do them online.
Okay. Do you have any suggestions of what's the best way?
Mazi, send me an email
I
because
will. I'll call you.
I know that Mark Warlow, he was one of my instructors in the past that did the broker classes. I think they're doing some broker classes at Greater Piedmont, but I'm
Oh,
not
okay.
positive at where he is in that program.
Okay.
But if you reach out to me, I'll try to find out that information for you.
Okay. Thank you.
But as I was saying, next year's classes are there. We are going to have in February, so mark your calendars for this, February 18th and 19th, the Rennie class, Real Estate Negotiation Expert. This is a fantastic 2-day class. If you're not really good at negotiating, you want to take this class. I think you'll really, really enjoy it. That is the one 2-day class that we're going to do for next year. But be on the lookout. Like I said, I'm opening up the rest of the classes this afternoon, those that are from May through December. The only classes that I cannot open for next year are the GRI classes because I have not confirmed dates with Virginia Realtors. I have to wait until they send me the information for me to put that down. But all of the other classes are open and will be available for you to register at any time. Any questions about education that we can help you with? Latte and Learns are already set for next year. We already have the GMMs. Transportation is going to be in May of next year. So lots of good information coming to us in 2026. Well, thank you guys for joining us today. And if anybody missed it, tell them it's recorded. It will probably be in Monday's email that goes out, our newsletter. So, and you can always find these on YouTube under the Cars channel. All right, guys, thanks so much, and we'll see you soon. Thanks,
Thank you all.
Ashley. Thanks, Pat.
Bye.